Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Ask WrestleJuice. As a reminder, I do this every single week, so if you want your question answered right here at Ask WrestleJuice, then do me a solid, hit that subscribe button and the notify bell so that you're always notified when the community tab thread goes up for these questions. Let's go ahead and dive into it. First up, from Juan Sanchez. Says, you think Jacob Fatu in WWE will overshadow Solo Sikoa and compromise the positioning of Solo as the current leader of the Bloodline? So evidently WWE, if the reporting is true on this, if it's accurate, might be a little bit concerned about Jacob Fatu. Of course, if you have any knowledge of Jacob Fatu, if you've seen him in MLW or any of the indie promotions he's been in, you'll understand like why they might be coming from this, or why they might feel like this might be a problem to new bad Bloodline, because Jacob Fatu is an incredibly charismatic guy. He's got an in-ring style that's super exciting. The guy he seems like a license to print money. Kind of surprising that he signed with MLW for as long as he did, given that you'd think he'd be a natural fit in WWE. In any event, we seem to be at the point where he's evidently signing with WWE and he should be joining up with the Bloodline, you would think, at any time now. A lot of people thought we were going to get him at Backlash. Instead, it was Tonga Loa. As far as him sort of becoming the spotlight over Solo Sikoa and fans turning sort of towards him, maybe getting behind him, maybe him stealing the spotlight a little bit, I think it's probably a concern that they would want to prepare for, maybe go along with the plans that you had, and in case the crowd starts to gravitate towards Jacob Fatu, then you'll have a place you can pivot to and sort of anticipate that as an issue. I don't think it's the kind of thing where they want to avoid putting him in there with Solo Sikoa. I think if anything, it'll sort of force maybe creative to be a bit more creative with Solo Sikoa. I think that Solo's done a pretty good job since WrestleMania as reestablishing himself as the sort of leader of the new vicious Bloodline. And I'm kind of curious to see where it's going to go from here. But there's sometimes little things that make me think, I don't really see it quite yet. I'll give you an example. Street Profits, Montez Ford, and Angelo Dawkins, of course, on SmackDown. Tama Tonga had that King of the Ring match against Angelo Dawkins. And along the way, Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga try to help out Tonga Loa, and Solo Sikoa try to help out Tama Tonga, and Montez Ford sort of takes him out with a big tope over the top rope, and it looked cool and everything, but it kind of, you don't want the Bloodline to look like Judgment Day. Like whenever Damian Priest isn't around and it's the rest of Judgment Day, if Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley's not around and it's the rest of Judgment Day, it's the other three guys, they kind of come off like clowns. And you don't want that for Solo Sikoa, because like he's supposed to be like the new Roman, but he's clearly not there yet. I hope that they're able to get him to that point, and I think that the dynamic between Solo and Jacob Fatu could be very interesting, but I guess it's not necessarily a concern unless creative just is completely blind to the possibility. They need to prepare for the crowd to be into Jacob Fatu. Kind of in the same way the crowd was into Solo Sikoa when he was the enforcer of the Bloodline. People were like, oh, what's this quiet dude going to do? He's kind of menacing. What's he going to do with that thumb of his? Where is he going to stick it? So maybe if you keep that in mind and you make Jacob the same sort of character that Solo was. If you remember, Solo was always keeping one eye on Roman, because when Roman would get flustered, he'd come off as vulnerable. And it looked like Solo was ready to pounce on that at any moment. And turns out he kind of did. Once Roman was out, Solo took over. And so if you establish that same kind of relationship between Solo and Jacob, the new enforcer of the Bloodline, I think you can have some interesting stuff going on there. But you're going to want to anticipate that kind of stuff, given that Jacob Fatu potentially could have some pretty immense star power. Good question, though. Next up, Eli Smith asks, should Hulk Hogan reopen Pastamania, brother? And like 12 of you gave this a thumbs up. So like evidently people want to know my thoughts on Pastamania. If he did, I wouldn't go there. I don't know economically, financially, if opening up a Pastamania restaurant in this day and age is a good idea. I don't know what the business of restaurants is like. There's a lot of closed business. COVID, unfortunately, closed a lot of businesses and a lot of restaurants. I don't know that not now was the right time for Pastamania. I really don't. I think he should focus on other stuff. It didn't really seem all that appealing. I saw, I think, like a video about Pastamania, or I read some articles on it a little while ago for some video I worked on. It doesn't seem like the most appealing place to eat. So I'm going to say, doesn't work for me, brother. Richard Ives asks, what fan chant do you personally hate? I really don't like the what chant. That's an easy one, but I really don't like it. The absolute worst is when they do the what chant when a wrestler is speaking in their native language. Like if there's a Japanese wrestler that speaks Japanese and the crowd starts whatting them. That's the absolute worst use of any chant anywhere, anytime. It's terrible. I hate it. Needs to go away. Lewins88 asks, how has Jericho done it again? A month ago, I thought he was done. The crowd had fully turned on him, but now he's one of the most entertaining things on Dynamite. I'm a learning tree. That's what Jericho says. Here's the thing about Jericho is that his thing has always been like, his sweet spot really is sort of absurdist comedy in pro wrestling. That's kind of when he's at his best, when he's trying to tell like stories and he gets kind of serious or he's like a bad guy or whatever. It doesn't really work all that well, but when he's a comedic bad guy, he really does understand comedy. That's how he got so over in WCW. Everybody likes to point out the 1004 moves of Chris Jericho. And that is what got him so over 30 years ago. And it's why the crowd isn't booing the shit out of him now, because they're like, okay, this stuff is actually pretty funny. He's leaning into, and you can try to figure out where the inspiration comes from. To me, it seems like he's really addressing the critics of him that say, hey, this guy steals the momentum from younger talent. Some people I've heard say, this is him taking a shot at CM Punk for wanting to be a locker room leader and, forcing wrestlers to take his advice or to listen to his advice. I don't know where the inspiration comes from. I know he's talked about a little bit, but I kind of feel it's more of a shot at his own critics, people that are critical of Chris Jericho for being like a momentum vampire. Regardless of whatever the inspiration is, I do find it pretty entertaining. I find it pretty amusing. And I guess we'll just sort of see where it goes from here, but the crowd seems to be into it. And yeah, I think the guy understands more than a lot of other people how to reinvent himself. And I think he can gauge the audience reaction and understand what direction to pivot into. He's a pretty savvy guy. B. York says, what are the top best entrance openers, like the glass breaking or You Think You Know Me or Rey Mysterio's Brica? To me, the best ever is, of course, the Wolfpack's Howling Wolf. That is the Wolfpack. It's back causing mass destruction. The bad boys of wrestling. Linda Taylor says, Scotland Calling just started beginner classes with Joe Hendry today in Edinburgh at his academy. Can you give me your views on him as a wrestler? Yeah, I think he's great. I think Joe Hendry's awesome.
I believe in Joe Hendry.
I am so happy for the success that he's getting right now. I've always appreciated what he brings to the table. It's unique and fun, and he's like a breath of fresh air. So I think you got probably a pretty good teacher there at his academy. So good luck to you. And yeah, Joe Hendry's awesome. I believe in Joe Hendry. Hoodlum912 says, will people continue to take dirt sheets seriously after a bunch of people in the industry have begun to shit on them regularly? So I know Triple H has called into question the credibility of certain outlets. I guess people were taking that to be Fightful and maybe Wrestling Observer. I don't know. There's always been a weird contentious relationship between like WWE specifically and like the dirt sheets. Like I know JBL has said that, they used to, feed them wrong information. I don't know. I don't know that anybody takes dirt sheets seriously now. Like, it's wrestling news, it's like, Fightful to me, for my money these days still, Fightful is really good at what they do. I get the feeling that with Fightful, it's going to be a bit more difficult. This is my own personal speculation. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to pull a fast one on Fightful because I think Sean actually does like the real journalist thing and he like like double sources things or whatever you're supposed to do. I'm not a journalist. We do not operate a dirt sheet. We read the dirt sheets and then we talk about them over at Going in Raw here at WrestleJuice. But yeah, I don't know. Will they lose credibility because of Triple H saying that they're not credible? I don't know. Look, if they get the info right, then they will retain their credibility. If they get the info wrong, they will lose credibility, and eventually, it's not a great business model. So, but so far, like, for example, Fightful's got a pretty good track record. So I think as long as there are people willing to speak to the dirt sheets will be fine. Johnny Burney asked, do you think Willow versus Mercedes should close out Double or Nothing with their title match? And do you see the women in AEW headlining a pay-per-view this year? No. To the second question, I don't see them doing that. I think ideally Mercedes would have main evented in her first AEW pay-per-view, but like a lot of people have said, it's not exactly like her rollout in AEW has been all that spectacular. They seem to have debuted her before she was ready to wrestle. So we've had like a couple months of just like promo stuff, which really it's not like her strong suit. So yeah, I don't really think I don't think they're gonna main event. Should they main event? Sure. I mean, she should be a big deal, but like they've kind of fumbled her. So at this point, maybe they shouldn't main event. But no, I don't. Tony Khan, he doesn't really invest. I know people have said it's gotten better, but they still don't feature more than one women's match per show on a regular basis. There's probably only going to be, 2 women's matches on the pay-per-view coming up. Hopefully it's more. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. But Tony Khan doesn't have a great track record booking women's wrestling. So I'm kind of bullish on the women's wrestling scene in AEW because there's just a track record there, and I'll believe that there's going to be change when I see that there is change. All right, we'll end on this one. Luis Areza says, will we see Lacy more on WrestleJuice? Love the content whenever she appears. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's kind of busy these days. I had thought about some ideas to bring her on the show, but I don't know that any of them would really work. She didn't watch wrestling. I was going to show her because last time I had her on, we did I showed my wife this death match, and it was like a Terry Funk, Mr. Pogo match. And it was pretty brutal.
The match was cut short after Funk blew fire at Pogo, who dropped onto the exploding barbed wire outside of the ring. When falling into it, the barbed wire pushed his chin and head back, breaking his neck. Oh, God.
That's why he's not moving?
Oh, wow. Okay, but he was just out for 7 months, and then he came back.
Steven! You made me just watch this and the guy had his neck broken? And he's just laying there? Of course he's laying there.
I should have done my research before.
Yeah! That's crazy. Why would you show me that?
So...
Why would you show me that?
I didn't know I was going to be the thing.
Dang. I mean, he could literally be dead right now.
He is. But
I mean,
not till 20
because of this match.
No, he's not though. I confirmed it. They wouldn't show the match on YouTube if he died.
Bro, he broke his neck.
And so I thought about showing her Samoa Joe versus Necro Butcher. Don't tell her I said that. What's this?